Do we want to have the questions, or do we want the questions to come in cold?
They're gonna come in cold.
Okay.
If I give them to you, you wouldn't have read them anyway. So
he's right.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of the RevOps Podcast. I am your host, of course, Jordan Henderson, and I'm joined today, as usual, with the usual cast of crews. What did we settle on? You guys are labeled as attendees to the podcast now.
Attendees? No, frequent guests.
Frequent guests is what I said in the speaking engagement about Brandon. And I can see your face just get defeated when I referred to you as the frequent guest.
Look, I pretended like I didn't even hear that and just kept going.
But anyways, I'm joined today by our frequent guest / sometimes host / mostly attendees, Brandon Redlinger and Jonathan Stevens. Go ahead and introduce yourselves, guys.
Thanks for having me back. This is Brandon Redlinger. And John Stevens.
Wow, John, we're going with John today.
Oh,
nice.
yeah.
Nice. You dude, you got to turn your gain down, bro. That is sharp. I just got some sharpness on that one. While Jonathan's fixing his gain, because John is fixing constant audio issues with this guy. Let's be honest. I'm gonna introduce. We're gonna do something a little bit different today, and by that I mean we're going to talk about something that's valuable because we're now like 4 minutes in and we haven't done anything but laugh about introductions. So we are going to do something a little bit different today. So everybody probably knows, well, everybody who listens to the podcast knows that I actually come from a legal background. I'm an attorney by education. I'm still a licensed attorney. And what you don't probably know is that law school is mostly fact patterns. And what I mean by that is there's no like simple questions when you're taking law school tests. What they do is they lay out like the facts of a case on an exam, the facts of an issue. And it's a 2-page fact pattern, and you have to basically go through and analyze what you would or would not do or advise in those scenarios and who's right and what law would apply and blah, 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 right? And it's a very complex thing. There's no such thing as like yes or no questions in law school. It's all, it depends, and everything is based on fact patterns. And so I thought it would be kind of fun to bring that concept, to the RevOps Podcast, given my background, and that it'll totally stump you guys, which is going to be really enjoyable for me.
I played the fifth.
Yeah. And so today we're going to do a bit of a fact pattern, and this fact pattern is actually based in reality. A person, I have anonymized it the best I can. I also have permission to use this in an anonymized way. But the person actually came to me and asked set up a meeting, and we did, take a 30-minute meeting. In advance, they did send me, here's my background, here's what I'm working on, here's the questions I have. And we had a 30-minute meeting where after the meeting, the person actually sent me, hey, here's like 7 takeaways that I took away from this meeting. And I was like, oh, wow, that was awesome. Like that's way more value than I thought I provided. So that's great. Amazing. And I thought, wow, we should do that with the whole episode and see what extra things you guys could provide to this person and everybody else listening who probably has similar questions. So that being said, before I go into the fact pattern, do either of you have questions about this before we totally stump you?
Not at the moment, but let's dive in. Let's see what we got.
All right.
Yes, sir.
And I have anonymized this the best I can. I don't think anybody will know who we're talking about. It'd be very hard for them to. So I'll read through the fact pattern, and then we'll dive into the questions. And everybody listening, I will make sure, Dave, this is a note. We got to put the fact pattern in the description of the podcast episode. That way, when people are listening to this, they can actually reference back to it as they go. So we will put it there, so everybody has it. So the fact pattern: Ester, 2 words, Ester. Nice, right? She is a new VP of RevOps. She started 5 weeks ago at a SaaS company selling in the enterprise space, software as a service company selling in the enterprise space, that has 250 employees. Polly has never held a true RevOps title. She spent the last 15 years working in data and business analytics, all in the financial services sector, banks, financial services, tech companies, that sort of thing, right? In roles ranging from entry level, where she started her career, all the way up to VP. She's led teams with data and business analytics. She took the role in RevOps as a new adventure and a test of her skills, right? She knew the leadership team at the company personally. And so they had reached out to her as somebody who gets stuff done and can come in and learn this thing. But she's never really held a RevOps role. For her, it's a new fun challenge. And she's the sort of person, I can tell you from meeting her in real life, she's going to crush this challenge. But big challenge for sure. she's leaning into the steep curve. There's a learning curve. She's leaning into that, and she's reaching out to RevOps leaders to pick their brains about her new venture, which is sort of how she and I connected. Which great place to start. Unbelievable. So in this scenario, you guys are RevOps leaders. Let's pretend that you're actually RevOps leaders.
Okay.
We're going to pretend that you're RevOps leaders, and she's reached out to pick our brains, right? She's super organized. She's provided you with a list of questions that she'd like to discuss on your call. She sent them in advance. She actually did this, by the way. It was awesome. And we're going to go through those questions. And that's the fact pattern. You guys up to speed? You with me so far? Are you picking up what I'm putting down?
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
I think this is a kangaroo court.
Do you need me to read that again? Are you still stuck on the name Ester? Are we good to slide? All right, we're sliding forward. All right, so the first question, she says, we have high level company goals. How do I use those as the VP of RevOps? What do I do with company goals? Anybody have thoughts?
That is such a high level question. Can you get a little granular on that guy?
Well, let's say what's the first thing you do? Somebody, you're leading RevOps at a company, and you come in and they say, hey, here are our growth goals for upsell, retention, new revenue, new logos acquired. By the end of this year, this is what we want to do. What would you do with that information?
Get to looking at the data first and foremost. Figuring out forecasting, historic data. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Well, it's a good starting point. So peel that onion a little bit more for me. What would you be looking for?
So the first thing, like when you're coming in, you got to understand the health of the business. You've got to understand what the capacity is for your sales team to close business in a given quarter or a given year, and ensure your goals are lining up to your forecasting and capacity.
Yeah, like does the data support that we can actually do these things, right? Mm-hmm. Are these goals appropriately set? Great first starting point. I love that. Like absolutely where you would go.
I think I would even start a little bit before that and saying, how did they come up with these goals? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, and yeah, exactly. Is this something that was just decided by the CEO, by the leadership team, or is this handed down to them by the board? What stage are they at? What is the goal of the company itself? Are they trying to IPO? Are they trying to sell to someone in the next 2 or 3 years? Like, what is really the goal of the company? How did we come up with those goals? And then I would go to where Jonathan just went, where John just went, and try to figure out, okay, is this realistic? Is this achievable given our current operating health? And then, I would work it top down and bottom up at the same time, right? You can't just do one or the other. I do think you have to do both at the same time.
Totally. I love both of those points, like understanding where those goals come from and where are we in progress to supporting those. Does the data support that goal is actually realistic, right? Like goals are only important in that they're both aspirational and realistic, right? Yep. And so super important. So let's say they're realistic, they're great goals, the data supports them, and they back into the idea of we want to IPO in 3 years. Then what do you do? What do you use those goals for?
Action.
Yeah, totally, right? But where I would start is, like, great, we have company goals and they're realistic and attainable and all these above. I'm going to go to each team in the revenue operation and say, what are your goals and how do they align to the company goals, right? Like, not just does the data support it, but like, if we want to grow by 8 million this year, and I go to the marketing team and the marketing team says, yeah, our goal is to generate $7 million in pipeline this year. Whoa! Problematic. We need to make sure that's not enough pipeline. We need to go to each team, and that's one of the first exercises I would do is once I've realized those goals, go to each team and say, great, like now we need to set the marketing's goals. Now we need to set sales goals. Now we need to set CS goals. That if we achieve all of those, we achieve that top level goal, right? And that it's a great opportunity for you to learn and meet, and especially 5 weeks into a role, to spend a bunch of time with the leaders of those teams because you're a partner in that process with them and you're a strategic thinker and sort of establish yourself in that way. So love that. Love all of that. Anything else?
I think kind of to that point, though, is the relationship building that goes along with it. Especially if she's new, she's going to want to learn the players, figure out who the people are, make sure there's a good relationship going. And then that's kind of where you start to dig in additionally to the goals and lining the teams up.
Totally.
Are we assuming that all the other members of the leadership team are bought into this too?
Well, we'll get to that in a little bit.
Okay.
For this question, let's assume they are, right? But I would make it it's really important where Jonathan started with, like, let's go see if the data supports these goals, because when you go meet with those other leaders and you're talking to, let's say it's the sales leader, and he says, well, we can't increase our sales goals because XYZ. Like, actually, you can. I have the data, right? Like, we have data to support that. We can grow that a little bit, and we need to, because it's how we're going to get to our top level company goals. So you go to those conversations a little bit more prepped and a little more armed to have those conversations.
Yep, and I would build out a full, if they don't have it already, a full operating, like a plan of record, a POR, right? Like, what is our head count quarter by quarter? What are our revenue goals? What's the pipeline? What's the coverage? And then how does that break out between net new and selling into the base? And then also segment your net new into SMB, mid-market, enterprise. So one of the first things that I saw when I was actually just interviewing at Engagio still, and this was one of the big selling points. John Miller opened up his spreadsheet and showed me the entire POR for the next 5 years. And I was like, Jesus Christ, this guy knows what. I've never seen anything remotely like this at all. Yeah, and it was built out exactly how, if you affect one little thing in the whole operating model, everything else it gets affected, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, and I don't think enough companies have that full plan built out. It's just like, we have a goal, let's try to get there. Yeah. All right, what is our budget? What is our head count? Where is all that coming from? And go from there. And
if anybody is doubting that John Miller had that, go listen to episode 9 where he was a guest, and you will not doubt that John Miller had put that together because the guy is a machine. So absolutely does not surprise me. Cool. I'm sliding forward into the next question. Composition of the team. And by the way, these are really scattershot because Polly's new in the role. She's got a lot of questions that are totally unrelated to one another. So, let's keep it that way. Composition of the team is the next question. Polly is inclined to decentralize the RevOps team. She currently has sales ops and tool management in her umbrella. Pros and cons to that. And if she does decentralize or decides to centralize, what type of team structure or talent should she look for her RevOps team? So let's start with the first question here.
Yeah.
Decentralize or not?
So I can be a very big advocate for centralizing because I have seen firsthand how much benefit that has created for our organization as far as just building our RevOps team up in a centralized format. And just because that team is centralized, it doesn't mean that person isn't embedded in the team that they solely focus on. So I'm in every marketing meeting. I'm maybe even more embedded with marketing than I have been, because I've got support now on my side with my team, so I can have more time with the marketing folks.
Totally agree. That decentralization would terrify me in this role, especially. And one thing that she noted on the call was the tools. I want to get somebody to come in and take over the tech stack. Man, it would terrify me to get rid of our tech stack and put that on another team, right? I want to continue to own the tech stack, and it might bring somebody in to go to the second question. I would bring somebody in with the talent to run the tech stack onto the RevOps team. That's certainly a persona that you would want to have on the team, but I would still want to keep that under me. Otherwise, if you decentralize that into other teams, you're going to create a scenario where marketing, CS, sales, they're all going to buy tools, they're doing different things, don't work well with one another, and you're going to create a lot of problems for yourself as the RevOps person down the road.
Yeah, either that or in financial services especially, this happens all the time, is just everything gets offloaded into the IT department. And then the IT department, they don't know how the everyday process of these tools work. They just know how to administrate it in the back end. And even then, it's not their job to learn marketing and sales automation tools. So good luck if it gets into IT.
Which for what it's worth, going back to the fact pattern, the background is from financial services. So my guess is where that's coming from is the 15 years of experience of that's what financial services companies do. Oof. It's not right. I don't think it's right in a tech company. It might be okay in financial services. I have no experience there, but it's interesting to hear you say that because that is her background, and that's probably where that instinct comes from.
Mm-hmm. Where is she reporting into?
CEO.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah. Nice. Just very good. Cool. Very good. Very good. Cool. All right. Moving on. Anything else anybody wants to add to the composition of team?
No, I definitely agree. Centralization, with maybe one caveat, as long as it doesn't act as just like, I see a lot of people who adopt the RevOps title who are just like sales ops people, and they're still just serving the sales ops function, right? And of course, sales loves it because now they have more resources that are supporting really what is essentially sales ops. And now marketing doesn't have the support. They just lost, their marketing and ops person. So if it is truly a revenue operations function, 100%. But if it's not, then I think there's a strong argument, keep it decentralized.
Yeah, and I think that goes to like what type of talent to bring in, right? Like if you're building this out and they have a sales ops person there, like great, sales ops should roll into you. The next hire should probably be a marketing ops person. Then you're identifying where you're operationally weak across the revenue like the whole revenue teams, all of them, and hiring talent that supports where you're weak, right? So if you're weak in marketing operations, bring a marketing operations person in to the RevOps team. If you're weak in CS, same, right? All of the above. If you're weak in tools management, bring a system admin in that can do those sort of things like business analytics. All of these things could roll into this role, but then having it centralized gives you the ability to make sure that team isn't just a sales ops team while supporting the entire operation and keeping visibility and control over that.
And most importantly, your team can prioritize amongst your team, as opposed to now if you've got somebody embedded somewhere else, they're going to have to prioritize everything for them, even though it's not best for the business. And that's what revenue operations is for the business to be successful. So
you're referencing those times in our daily stand-up when you're like, I'm working on this today. And I'm like, no, you're not. which has happened. Like, yeah, like I totally hear you, but this other project is way more important for us to get done now. And we're going to move everybody onto that for today. Like it happens. It's a very common thing, but that's really important because usually we wouldn't do that if those things weren't more important to the revenue generating aspect of the whole business, right?
Yeah. And the sales ops and the marketing ops people who are not decentralized do not get a full vision of the company and do not see the challenges that the company face. They just see the challenges of their particular department. And that is not what you want in revenue ops. Nor
will they have daily exposure to like how that works. And so if I ask you, Jonathan, you've sat on my team really for about a year and a half, if I ask you to jump into a sales ops related problem, you have so much visibility from our daily stand-ups into how we do things in like the sales op world that you can, we don't have to really onboard you into doing it. You could just step over and start doing it. Right. But if it was before that, when you sat in marketing ops and we never communicated and I pulled you in to be like, okay, great. So like, how do I log into this tool? Like, what do we use for this? What do we do for this? And
what is this?
Right? And then I am disinclined to bring you into those things because it's more work to ramp you into the project than it is to just do it ourselves, which is problematic. And that's a situation you want to avoid. All right, sliding forward. We got more questions.
How many times are you going to say sliding forward? Sliding forward.
As long as I don't say swarm as many times I've heard Jonathan say it in the past 2 days. He keeps telling me about leads. He swarmed that account. You see this? You got to swarm that account. You got to swarm them. Just got to swarm them up.
That's a perfect adjective.
Texting me about swarming things. I was like, what is that word? Like, oh man. It's just cringing.
It's from bees.
Yeah, I know, but like
bees are pretty smart. I hear
they can swarm.
They swarm. We're not
sliding
swarming.
Forward.
Yeah, sliding on forward. We're swarming that next question, which is what are, and this is I'll sort of like make this one a little more concise than it was because let's say what are the 3 critical success factors in RevOps that you need to establish in the first 30 days? I'll go first if you guys want to think about it, because both of you leaned your head back and sighed very aggressive.
The first 30 days piece is like, yeah, that's a tricky one.
The first thing I was thinking is like 30 days. She's like
call it 90, but I would actually say 30 for the first one, which is organizational buy-in. And that goes back to, like, clearly the CEO is bought in, right? They brought her in to do this role. She's reported directly to the CEO. She's got the autonomy to decide, centralize, decentralize. Like, I know that the top level is bought in, and that's great. That's one of the most important things. She needs to go to the marketing person. She needs to go to the CS lead, sales lead, all of the above, and make sure that they're bought in. And if they're not, figure out like quick wins, ways she can support those teams to get them bought in very rapidly.
I will fight back on that one. I'll say I don't think she has to be the one to convince them to buy in. And if she is that person, then there's a huge problem. That needs to come from the top. The buy-in
if it comes from the top, there's not true buy-in. Because if I tell you to do something, it's different than if your peer convinces you it's the right thing.
True.
Right? One of those you see, if you show the value of something and get somebody to buy into it because you've provided value to them. So like as a RevOps person, if I do a bunch of RevOps type work that helps the marketing and CS teams, that creates buy-in from the marketing and CS leaders. Whereas if I say, hey, CEO, can you go tell the CMO I needed him to do this? That is not going to create buy-in. That creates friction, right?
Wait, so Jonathan, is your point the CEO should have been the one to get organizational buy-in that RevOps is the right way to go to market or whatever? Is that your point more than?
And like I know I keep hammering home on financial services, but I've been in that side of the fence, and it isn't the senior leadership. The way they do things there is pretty old school. So
and she's not in a financial services company now, though.
Okay.
She's at a 250 enterprise SaaS company. God, do we need to read the fact pattern again?
I saw the 250, but enterprise okay, fine. I get it now. But even so, like even a lot of companies, like you get those C-suite leaders who are stuck. They have ways they've done things for 10, 20 years.
Totally.
Like they're stuck to it. They're going to do it this way. Who are you in RevOps to tell me what I do for my job? They're not going to take an equal's advice as much as they're going to take somebody who's can control their future.
I think it's both, right? Like I think you need to show value and get buy-in, but you also need that support from above, right?
Yeah.
For sure. Like if they see the value and they're hearing from their CEO, like, hey, this is the way we're going to do it. Sure.
Yeah. I almost think it's more getting their trust in you as the leader of the RevOps team more than it is like, I got to sell you guys on RevOps is, the right hire.
It's managing up. Is what it is. Yeah. And to manage up, you need to earn the trust of everybody and then convince them that there's value. And you're essentially selling. Like that's the reality of that scenario. You're selling the concept, right? So organizational buy-in for me is like 30 days. That would be like core focus because I won't achieve anything in my time at that company if I start to do it and I don't have organizational buy-in.
Well, I feel it's building relationships.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And with that comes the buy-in.
Yeah. So, all right. So that's one. That's mine. As one of the critical success factors in the early days of the company. What other ones are there?
Educating yourself, learning the ins and outs of every part of the business, every part of the organization, how it's structured, who reports to who's going to get in the what's going to get in the way of projects you want to get across the finish line, and how you can mitigate those. That'd be a good place. You got to do the first quarter is essentially just learning. Like you're not going to be able to put a lot of stuff to action when you're coming out of the gate. So I think a lot of it's just building relationships and figuring things out.
I do think there are some small quick wins that are probably easy low-hanging fruit that you can just go ahead and tackle right now. Maybe some holes that you could easily plug. But for the most part, I do think that, man, the first 60, 90 days, learn as much as you can about the business. Talk to as many internal stakeholders. Talk to as many customers as you can. Get to know the space as well as you can. Because one thing that drives me crazy is when someone comes into the business and they think they know this business better than I do, who have been here 2, 3, 5 years, right? And they're like, here's how we should do it. And you're like, we actually already tried that. Well, let's do it anyway, right? Like,
yeah,
there's no way you have the context to make these decisions over people who have been here already.
Yeah, and I actually think there's a combination of both of your answers there, which is like quick wins and learning everything, which is figure out what the quick wins are and then lead those projects, but know that you know nothing, and leading that project is a huge learning opportunity for you. Because you're leading a cross-departmental project, you're going to engage with people and you're going to be like, cool, so what do you do? And if I need somebody to do this, like who does that? And you're going to be forced to ask questions that you otherwise might not think of because of the quick win project you're leading, right? It's a really good way to do that.
Yeah, and if you look at Phil, our new CRO, like he's had some great quick wins, and a lot of what he's doing is like honestly just holding people accountable, right?
Yeah.
Getting ideas from other people
And he's leading projects where he's like, cool. So like, who should be involved in this? Yeah. Like,
and he's not saying, hey guys, this is how it should be done. Go do it. Right. Yeah. It's, hey, like, here's an idea. What do you think? Could this work? Let's talk it through. Let's brainstorm. Let's massage this. And then it's like, all right, how do we actually put this into action now? Wow. He's actually thinking about the bigger picture, the strategy, how everything plays together.
And he's learning everybody's roles, strengths, weaknesses, and ways to project manage, right? Because he asks the question, and I love this question all the time, which is like, I think we need to do, this piece of this project. Who's the best person to do that, right? Like, who's the best at that thing? Which is like, cool, he knows that forever then. If he ever needs that, that's the best person for that, which is a really powerful thing for us to know, because a lot of RevOps is project management. Like, that's the reality of it.
Yeah. And to that point also, it is so critical coming into a new business. Like, we have a few of those here ourselves where there are certain points that you need to know who they are, or else you're going to be lost trying to figure things out. So there's certain people at our business that are the key knowledge holders of information that without knowing that, you're going to be spending a lot of time hunting it down, trying to figure it out.
Totally. All right. Is what we're going to do now? We're going to
slide forward. Slide on forward.
All right. This one is going to be a bit controversial as a question, I'm sure. Jonathan and I will probably have a minor altercation, so everybody brace yourselves.
It's on.
What tech should I implement right away? We have Salesforce, HubSpot, and a few other tools for the teams to use, like a dialer, sales engagement, and like ad tracking.
So what tech net new in addition to already having Salesforce, HubSpot, and what else?
Yep. They have a dialer, email cadencing, and they obviously have all the stuff to manage, like ad spend and that sort of thing. But just that's it. Oh, and Zoom Info, and they had Zoom Info.
If it's not a new dialer, that's the first thing I would do is get that crappy outreach out of there. But
great answer.
And get that outreach out there. But BI tool would be a huge one for the revenue operations team. If they're going to want to analyze data, forecasting, understand the business, you got to have a BI tool. You can't do it all without it.
BI tool. What else?
What else?
Jordan's going to say lean data, and he's going to say lean data until they become a sponsor of the podcast.
I've been waiting for them to sponsor us for a long time. So we've got lean data and a BI tool so far.
BI tool. I'd say a good CX tool would be good. Understanding product usage. If you've got a SaaS product, a CS tool would be great to be able to track usage, understand the history of that usage. Being able to track NPS is a huge one. Understanding the health of the product and the users in the product. It's you have a face on you like there's something
because I know because I know you could sit here and list like 7 tools that you could buy, and I disagree with all of them. I don't agree with any single one of these because my
Jordan's like no tools, no
right.
Tools.
That was my answer. No tools.
You son of a!
I knew it.
Right? Why you buy? You don't know where your job in revenue operations is to align your processes and procedures to the buyer's journey. She doesn't even know the buyer's journey yet. She doesn't know below that what processes and procedures are in place to support that buyer's journey. And then below that, she doesn't know what technology they have to support those processes and procedures to support that buyer's journey. So before you can even answer that question,
you have a misleading question.
You have no, it wasn't. It was exactly as it was read to me, and
he knew what was going to happen.
But like you're just like throwing paint to the walls, and by the way, that was actually the instinct on the call. Was like I'm thinking this, and this, and I was like, why? Like, what would you do with that? You have no idea what you're going to use that for yet, which is fine. But start by make that buyer's journey, then map those processes and procedures, and then say, great, here's what we want it to be. Here's where we have a gap, right? Like we want everybody to get a phone call in the first 30 minutes, but we don't have any lead routing in place. Like, cool. Then you need lean data first, right? Or like you need a dialer first, but identify those gaps and fill those gaps and then worry about buying other tech. But most importantly, you got to do the rest.
So maybe my second chance at this Before you buy any tech,
Take two.
build out a technology model. Like get a deck together of all the tech you own today and how it works together, and if there are any redundancies. So maybe you start with figuring out redundancies. Do you have too many tools?
I think that's the third layer, right? Like buyer's journey, process and procedures, and then tech model.
Yep.
And see how all of it works together. And then from there, you can say, great, like we can get rid of this tool because we have one that could also do that. And we can add this tool because that will support this part of the journey that we want to support, right? So yeah, totally. And I knew you were going to go all in on like, let me start listing off tools.
He's like, well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. If Jonathan had his way, our 18 tool tech stack would be like 64 pieces of technology at this point. Just
And it would be
he adds
glorious.
like one a week.
there was like a 3-month window where So I knew this was gonna. I was like, when I got asked this question, I was like, God, I'm happy Jonathan's not answering this because
their budget would all be blown on tools.
I love tech. What could I say?
You do. You really do. By the way, everybody who knows, this is a rule that Jonathan is a deal that Jonathan and I made because there was a brief period where he was like weekly sending me like 5 tools and then scheduling demos and putting them on my calendar. So I started like just declining demos that he was setting up because it's like I don't have time to do that. So I made a deal with him that he gets to pick 1 tool a quarter that he's really passionate about, and I will take a demo of that piece of technology, but 1 a quarter, no more. And he's not allowed to recommend anything else. And so far, you've actually stuck to that. You did use your Q1 usage like 3 days into Q1, though. It was like the third day of the quarter.
I'm going to ask what that is off the podcast because there's one tool that I know Jonathan's been wanting that I want now too.
I'm sure it's the same one, but good. Yeah. and we had a conversation where I said, "Are you sure you want to use it on this one? Because to be clear, I will not take another demo of another piece of your technology for the next 3 months. That is the rule." And he said yes. So if anybody has that person, that has been very effective for me and Jonathan because I am 10% less annoyed at him when he does this now. So
I can't wait till May till I get my next one.
Get round 2 in May. All right. So what are the other questions Polly should be asking? Because that was her final question, which what a great question, right? What are the things, because it's her first time in a revenue operation. She doesn't know what she doesn't know. What are the other questions she should be asking?
Asking who?
Anybody. Us, the company, CEO, the company, whoever, yeah.
Yeah, I would want to know, like, my headcount and my budget. I mean, that all goes into the plan of record, right? But if they don't have that, I would want to know what is my headcount, what is my budget.
Totally.
So I can start building everything out.
Yeah.
And hopefully that's broken out by quarter.
Ideally for the next 2 years, right? Like
Exactly. And that's part of modeling everything too. Like all the teams need to know their headcount and their budget.
Yeah.
Yep. Headcount, budget, where the growth is. How do we envision the growth for the next couple of years would be a big one. Are we growing headcount and budget over the next couple of years? Are we trying to kind of stay lean and mean? Those are important things to understand because that can drive a lot of your technology decisions and your team decisions. Also just asking what people's problems are. Like going in and having a one-on-one, say, what are your pain points right now? What do you wish we could have that we don't today? That is one of the most valuable things you can come in and ask people, and they will immediately feel like you care about their pain points, and that, there you go, there's your relationship.
Yeah, I do love the idea of going to people and saying, what are the biggest blockers from you being successful right now? And then keep a list and figure out which ones you can quickly remove, right? Yep. That is a really powerful way to like put your stamp on a company. And every person there is like, that person's a doer. Holy crap. They came in and just did it, right? And that is in a lot of ways what you're trying to do. So I love that. I think that is the most important, one of the most important things you can do is just, what are the blockers that you're facing right now, right? Super valuable. Anything else?
The other thing that I want to know when I'm meeting with people is, what are your goals? What are your career goals? That helps me know exactly how they are making decisions, right? If I know someone really is dead set on becoming, CMO and in 5 years and they're a marketing manager, that actually helps me understand how they're making the decisions that they're making. If they're like, can I be added to that meeting? It's like, okay, it's probably because they want some additional learning and context for this. Or it's like, otherwise you're like, that person just wants to make sure they're not being left out of decisions, and you can see it as a as a very selfish ask.
Are you vesting? Right? Are you vesting in peace? Are you like where are you?
Yeah, it's like why are you asking if you want to join this meeting or not? You know, so that's something that I love doing, is just like understanding what are people's motivations, and then how can I help them achieve that, right? Because we're not going to be at the same company for the next 10 years or whatever that might be. It's like, during our time together, how can I help you achieve that?
Yeah. So, and interestingly, one that popped into my mind, because Phil, who is my new boss, you get a boss or you get a boss, right? Phil, our CRO is my new boss. One of the first questions he asked me, and this is one that I would think would be very important to ask people that you're going to work closely with, which in our role is a lot of people. One of the first questions that Phil asked me, it was probably like his 4th day, he said, "What time of day are you most productive?"
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh shit, I think that's a good question. I am most productive from 9 a.m. to noon. And he was like, great. Okay. Let's schedule meetings more in the afternoons so that you can work more in the mornings.
I love that.
And I was like, oh man, like what a thing to kick off with, right? Like, oh God, because my time is valuable. It respects when it's going to be used the best. And like, what a great thing to know about how I work, right? And know about the people you're working closely with. Because if you can cater everything around the best you can when people are the most productive, it both makes them feel respected and heard. It's also the best thing for the business because you're maximizing their productivity, which maximizes the returns, right? And so I loved that question. So I felt like I had to put it out there because, man, that was, for me, I was like, oh, damn. Like, nobody's ever asked me that before. Like,
I feel like my answer is opposite of yours. I think probably like 8 to midnight is my answer.
I know.
Same, yeah.
You always do things, and like I get Slack messages at like 10:30 at night, and I'm like, Jonathan, like, what are you doing? But I can say, in all honesty, I've never scheduled you for a Zoom meeting in your best work hours. So been respected.
Nice.
Been respected. And I did move. We do a daily Scrum stand up on an ops team, which is a 30-minute thing, usually 15, but sometimes 30. And I did move it. We used to do it at 8 a.m. before Jonathan joined the team, and I moved it to 9:30 in the morning so Jonathan can sleep in so that he can work later.
You're so thoughtful, Jordan.
It was pretty nice, actually. Which 9:30 was as late as I could go because I have a person in the East Coast. So that's 12:30, right? Like I can't push it any later. But it was like, oh man, I gotta like shift this because Jonathan's messaging me at like midnight, so I know he's not gonna be on the 8 a.m. phone call. But it's
plight
powerful.
of the night owl.
Oh, it kills me.
But I do think that line of questioning is very valuable, right? So it's not just what time are you most productive. It's just like, how do I work best with you, right? Like when senior people join the company here, I like to know what are your quirks? How can I work best with you? And it goes, just beyond just work hours. It goes to things like Slack or email. Do you want text or not? Like, are you the type that expects me to reply right away or, and I just want to know for each individual person, how can we work best together?
Yeah.
And I think to add to that, sometimes it's better, like I know in the COVID situation, it makes it a little more challenging, but doing this in an informal setting, so like going out to lunch or like doing it for drinks after work or something like that, you can often find that you'll get a lot more honest responses, a lot more laid back relationship building in that environment, as opposed to like setting up a one-on-one in a conference room or something like that. But that's obviously going to be more applicable to post-COVID life.
Yeah, which most people are coming back from right now. So, it's great for some people, not great for others.
Knock on wood.
Wait, hold on. One more thing. I got to pull the brand in. And say one more thing. It just came to me too. It's okay. One more thing. I always love to ask other leaders what they think the biggest opportunity in the business is.
That's right? A good one. That's a really good one.
What do you think the biggest opportunity? Because that kind of goes back to my point of like they know the business way better than you do at this point. And then get everyone's answer, and then kind of synthesize that, and then maybe that's where your quick win is. That's where your quick win comes from.
Good way to get there. That's it. That's all of Polly's questions. I will say that Polly, the person, she's an active listener. She's listened to every one of our episodes. I've been told. I believe her because she actually referenced some things, which was flattering and terrifying that there's that much information out in the world. But she's going to crush this role. Like 30 minutes with her, I was blown away. She's smart, hardworking, go-getter. She's doing the rounds, meeting with other RevOps folks, getting all the information. She sent me notes from our own meeting. Like, just, she's going to absolutely, Polly's listening. You are going to crush that role. And I hope this was helpful for you. I hope it was helpful for everybody else in our listeners. If it was, go ahead and give us a 5-star review on Spotify and Apple. And if it wasn't, don't give us 1 star. Just shoot me a direct note on what to do better next time. Send me your questions for This Week on LinkedIn. I know we didn't do any this week because the whole thing was kind of this week on LinkedIn. But send me your questions. I've got a couple in the hopper, but I'd love to get a few more. And we will see everybody next week. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.